Good afternoon. Welcome to our first annual meeting of the Cheney Depot Society. And thank you for coming. We're really glad that you came. I'm Tom Truelove, President of the Cheney Depot Society Board of Directors, and I'd like to give a big thanks to all of our members, supporters, and friends for your generous contributions, monetary and otherwise, to the Save Our Station cause. We wouldn't be so far along without your support. Thank you. First, what we need to do is some Zoom instructions. As usual, Zoom is not such a good medium. It'd be so much better to be together with you in person. And we hope that by next year, our next annual meeting, that'll happen. But today, we're asking that you please leave your audio muted unless you are speaking. And we would suggest that you can submit questions for any of the presenters through the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. This meeting is being recorded, and other than that, we're just happy to have you join us for this annual meeting. There's some news that is actually fairly sad. Dr. Peter Hansen was scheduled to be with us this afternoon, but he passed away last Thursday. We're saddened by the loss of our friend, our inspiration, and our benefactor. We wish his family well during this period of loss. And we are all the better for having been in many ways mentors of this remarkable man. So thank you, Dr. Hansen. We wish you could be with us and share your wisdom. So moving on, I'd like to introduce the board of directors. The Cheney Depot Society Board has 12 members, and each one brings a specific set of skills which have been vital to our success to date. All are uncompensated, all are volunteers. They all contribute many hours to the cause each week and each month. And so let's get to know them. The officers are me as president. John Taves is vice president. Want to wave, John? Bonnie Eccles is the treasurer. Bonnie. Susan Beeman is our secretary and great organizer. Todd Abelman is on our board. Ryan Guard. Jack Gillingham. Richard Mount. Rick is there. Terry Morning. Jeffrey Stafford. Kimberly Volan, and Jill Wiseman. It's a great board, and each one contributes a very specific benefit to all the things that we do. So with that, I would like to turn the meeting over for a while to Susan and get on with the program. So Susan.
Thank you, Tom. It's my privilege to introduce to you one of our most recent volunteers added to the Depot effort. Hannah Ibarra holds a degree in anthropology from Eastern Washington University, and she has been functioning as a historian here. We discovered an item in the Depot as we prepared it to move. It was an envelope from a very, very long time ago. And the construction crew that was prepping the building brought it to our attention, and we turned it over to Hannah to research. And so this is the first time seen in public. Hannah is here to tell us the story of our lost and found item.
Thank you, Susan. Well, and thank you to the board for allowing me to go on this little treasure hunt to discover what we could find out about this envelope that was found. This is a picture of the envelope that you can see here on your screen. And this envelope and the finding of it inside the baggage claim area behind a desk, a forgotten piece of history, kind of brings us back to what was so interesting about the Depot as a historical site. and also the vision for its functional future. So if we go to the next slide, inside the envelope, we found a photograph. It's inscribed with the words, "I'm resting in the arms of my daddy," and shows a Black couple sitting in front of a house. In the next slide, we can see on the back of the photograph that the picture was taken in Bristow, Oklahoma. It's dated April 23rd, 1927, nearly 100 years ago. And it's stamped with a studio stamp for Hall Pike Studios. So with that information, I started digging into what the history of the photograph could be. And if we go to the next slide, we can see there was also a letter inside the envelope. And the letter, if I just, one moment here, the letter, I'll read it out to you. It says, "Tell Adelia I said when I come up there, I will have a baby too. How is brother and Catherine? Tell mother I haven't forgot her. Tell her I cry nearly every day. Tell her I will tell her someday. Look for me every time. Kiss mother 250,000 times for me. Also Catherine and brother and little son and the whole family. I will write more next." And then we can assume that there was another piece of paper in the letter that was lost. Now we get our first historical clue was this address and the intended recipient of the letter, Sister Etta Bradley in Wichita Falls, Texas, 1708 Elizabeth Street. And this is where I, as a historian, got to have a little fun because I started with that address. And then next slide, I looked into the city directories for Wichita Falls, Texas. I found this page in 1924. It's hard to see here, but on the next slide, I zoomed in, and about a third of the way down there, you can see Bradley Alex, Etta in parentheses indicating his wife. He was a bootblack at Innovation Shine Parlor and Hatters, and it lists his residence as 1708 Elizabeth Street. So those are our intended recipients for this letter in Wichita Falls, Texas, Alex and Etta Bradley. And he was a shoe shiner. And if you look down a little ways further, you can find the name Etta. She's listed as a domestic at 1708 Elizabeth Street. So she was a housewife. So then on the next slide, there's the house. We are a society for a historic structure, and coincidentally, the home is a historic structure in Wichita Falls, Texas. It was built in 1919, and the fact that it stands today is a testament to what we as a country, how we as a country value historic buildings, and we are a society that is valuing a historic building right here in Cheney, Washington. So then on the next slide, I decided that that pathway wasn't leading me anywhere else. Unfortunately, I couldn't find Alex and Etta's family. So I looked into that stamp for the Hall Pike Studios and was able to use Ancestry.com to find the owners of Hall Pike Studios in Bristow, Oklahoma. They were the only photographers on staff, so they are likely the people who took the photograph, Edwin and Leota Hall Pike. And you can see them here listed on the 1920 census as photographers. Edwin was born in Texas. Leota was born in Missouri. We're covering all our bases for how the railways connected people from all over the country. On the next slide, I also was able to find Leota Hall Pike's personal property listings for the year of 1922. She had $1,500 in her personal property, which was about half of an annual salary, average annual salary for that year. So quite a bit of money, and it's listed under her name, So for the wife to have property like that in 1922 is actually an interesting historical tidbit. Next slide. So how does all of this kind of random historical information about a letter that we found 83 years later, 1,350 miles away from where the photograph was taken in a historic depot? And I think it takes us back to why the railways were so important in this era and why Clarence Martin and the commercial club here in Cheney thought that renovating and restoring the old depot and making a more significant face for Cheney, Washington was important. And on this map, this is the Northern Pacific Railway lines in the 1920s. You can see it stretches right across the top of the country, connecting Seattle all the way over to the Twin Cities, Minnesota. But it doesn't head down to Wichita, Texas, and Wichita Falls, Texas, and Bristow, Oklahoma. But the railways in the 1920s were small conglomerates. They were leasing, they had affiliate rails, and they were all combining at that time. And it really was sort of the lifeblood of commerce in the United States. And it was the veins and arteries, if you will, of how these little towns like Cheney, Washington became relevant and important to commerce and distribution. And if you go to the next slide, this is the Southern Pacific Railway system. And in the 1920s, Southern Pacific was buying and leasing and attaching itself to every railroad it could. It was one of the fastest growing rail companies at that time. And it was in January 17th, 1929, the Southern Pacific Railroad system had actually purchased all of these routes that you can see here on this map. And if you can see it, it's quite hard to see, but right at the top of the slide in really tiny letters where the black rail routes end is the word Spokane. And this was the Cheney Depot, and then subsequently the Spokane depots were the end point for the Southern Pacific Railways. And the intersection for where that Southern Pacific rail line met with the Northern Pacific lines. So the route that this letter would have taken, missing its spot that it was supposed to be dropped off at the Cotton Belt Depot on its way to Wichita Falls. And then it came all the way up here where the railroads transitioned and was simply, unfortunately, left behind. But it stands as a marker on why we at in Cheney, Washington were so important to the rail system, because we were that intersect of commerce right here. So that's a little history we found, and it's been an exciting and fun thing for me to get to do as a historian. So I'm grateful to the board, and I'm grateful to all of you who've come to support this project, because it really is fascinating, and it's going to be great for the commercial intersects of Cheney, Washington.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, we're going to, we had a few difficulties with technology this afternoon, so I am trying to share my screen with you, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to.
That was a great presentation that you gave, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Well, you're going to miss the photographs that I had prepared for you. So I'll just give you a quick construction update, and then we'll move on to the next segment. I owe you a photographic survey of the depot. We started this about 6 years ago, and the estimated cost that was in our budget to move the depot was roughly $80,000. By the time we actually had an engineering study and a contractor who was making it was a little bit more extensive than that. But when you consider that they were actually moving in 40 tons of structural steel that they were inserting into the building and then wrapping around the building, the mover had to bring that, I think it was 7 semi-truckloads over the mountains from Everett into Cheney. And most of you were able to see the actual move in downtown Cheney. It was an amazing thing. I will invite you to visit the Facebook page and take a look at the photos and videos that we have there. At this time, we have a new foundation under the building. We don't have a concrete floor yet. We do have, the roof has been repaired. The Spanish roof tiles were removed from the building. They laid down ice and water shield and then put the same roof tiles back on in place, just replacing a few broken ones. The windows have been removed, and we have a team of volunteer woodworkers that are tackling restoration of the original windows, and those will be replaced into the depot. So we've made significant progress, and we're really excited to be able to open it up and share it with you in person, which hopefully a little bit later in this year will be taking place. So, Tom, I'm going to give this back to you.
Thank you, Susan. I might mention, I think all of you know that we have just a huge library of photos of every aspect of this project that Jill Weisman has done for us. She's a very talented photographer, and so we invite you to look at our website, look at the Facebook page, because it's just really very interesting. And this is a really big project. I'll give you a financial update and hopefully won't put you to sleep when we do this economic stuff. But we thought, 6 years ago that it was a relatively small project and we could just whistle along and get it done. BNSF turns out is a challenging entity to work with, and so by the time we crossed all the difficulties that we ran into and funding, it turned out to be a little more expensive. The total project cost is $2,514,000. This is the project from the beginning to the end. To date, where we are right now, we have spent $1,277,000, which led us to be able to do the move, the site preparation, the exterior restoration, and get it to the point that it is now. And I have to say that we were able to raise that money in the in-kind resources. And so when we ended 2020, we were not in debt to anyone. We covered those costs. The cost to complete essentially are the cost of interior restoration, utilities, preparing the parking lot, doing all the things that are necessary to make this the depot useful. And that is going to be $1,237,000. So once we have done that, we will have the $2,514,000 project. In 2020, we spent a bunch of money. We spent, in terms of money and in-kind, $802,000. Of that, $761,000 about was for capital expenditures, and that's about 95% of the total. So 95% of our 2020 spending went right into making that building secure and get some of the serious restoration done, get it relocated, get it off of railroad land. The sources that covered that funding in the last few years is we had a wonderful, I guess you'd call it a commitment from Dr. Peter Hansen to match dollar for dollar contributions to the cause. He put up $500,000 to do that, match dollar for dollar any contributions, and we used about 300,000 of that. We had a $367,000 grant from the Washington Historical Society Heritage Capital Grant. We had $145,000 Sunshine Partners real property donation. Thank you, Gary and Sue Geske. We had $25,000 from a Vista Foundation. We had $5,000 grant from Spokane Preservation Advocates. It was their only grant last year. We had somewhere around $50,000 in in-kind professional services and donated materials. And the really remarkable thing to me is we've had $148,000 worth of individual contributions from donors. So all of those times that people bought a T-shirt, joined and became members of the Depot Society result in 148,000. And I have to tell you that when you're applying for grants, that number is very important. It tells the potential grant persons that we have a community that's serious about this. So where'd the money go? Some of the larger expenditures. Moving that depot was at $403,000. And I think all of you that watched it be done saw how professionally it was done. And, you know, I think we got our money's worth, but it was a big price tag. Restoring the depot site in the BNS yard wasn't free because we had to fill in the holes and make it look like the depot had never been there. We had the property acquisition, we had site preparation. All the old buildings had to be removed from the old site. We had to get rid of the old concrete stuff around there, haul in a lot of material, a lot of yards of material to create a base that the depot could be put on. We had to put a new foundation under the building, and that was expensive. We had a number of the restoration things, you know, Sue mentioned the roof, things like that, and the contractor expense of doing that. And then on top of that, we had insurance that once we got it on our site, taxes and permits. So that gives you an idea of the general sort of way that it went. Now, for the completion, the $1,237,000, we are pretty well assured of a $305,000 Washington Historical Society Heritage Capital Grant. We've been awarded that. It looks like it's going through the legislature and it'll happen. But in order to get that, so we can spend it, we've got to match it. And so our immediate need is to find $305,000 worth of cash and in-kind services as a match. Vista has guaranteed a $25,000 grant. We've asked the BNSF Foundation for a grant. We think 20,000 is probably what they might give, but we don't know that yet. And we're applying for other grants, and it's a very laborious process. We expect significant in-kind professional services, donations of material, equipment, and labor, and hopefully we can put this all together. But this is a big deal, and if we're going to get it done in 2021, we've got a funding gap now somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000, depending upon our success at grants. The need is that 305,000 to match the Heritage Capital Grant. And we say you're going to need your continuing support as well as financial and volunteer contributions. It's a big dream, a big project, a big financial need. And once we get it done, we're going to be very proud of our big accomplishment. I'll go right on and talk a little bit about the board's vision for the rail depot. We've been so busy, you know, getting the thing moved and on its new site that this is something that we're beginning to think about. Dr. Pete talked to us a lot about his vision for what would happen with the project, and so I'll include some of that here as we go through this. Our vision and philosophy follows very closely that of our chief benefactor and Save the Station enthusiast, Dr. Peter Hansen. He was to be the feature speaker, as you know. His commitment extended to investing up to $500,000 in the project in a community where he was raised, but where he hadn't lived for the past 60 years. So remarkable. First of all, we believe the depot should become the center for community engagement. As Dr. Pete put it, center of the town for friendship, fellowship, and community cohesion. Secondly, we plan for a long run and a sustainable future over many decades. It's been around since 1929, so hopefully at least we'll be around for the next 92 years. To be sustainable and a vital center for community engagement, the depot needs to generate a revenue stream, which along with CDS membership dues can pay for taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. So we plan to find a stable rent-paying tenant, which is fully compatible with daily public use of the building. Dr. Pete saw the depot as a destination that would draw visitors and benefit the small businesses in the community. Any tenant that we find needs to offer something that's fun and useful, something to look forward to. An example might be a restaurant or a coffee shop or both, which draw the community in on a daily basis. Drawing the community in is very important. As Dr. Pete envisioned, this would be an active use, which would give community members a reason to come in, see the displays, use the public space, and return often. Having a tenant also creates a new source of economic development for the downtown Cheney and supports downtown community vitality. We intend that at least 25% of the floor place will be used for themed displays, programming, and community engagement. Dr. Pete wanted to highlight the many opportunities available here, from EWU to Turnbull, the Fish Lake Trail, and Ice Age tours. We intend to provide space and opportunity for group gatherings of community members. We see working with local and regional organizations in cooperation will help provide programs and interest and community use. One of the things that Dr. Pete continuously talked about was expanding the membership in the community depots, the Depot Society, and actively involve members in charting the depot's future. So that's a very important thing. Grow the Cheney Depot Society. And then look to the future, and there's all kinds of things that can happen, all kinds of dreams we can have. Some have even dreamed that there might be a dinner train as part of that long-range future. So maybe there could be. The fact that we've moved it and got as far along as we have indicates that our dreams can become reality. Dr. Pete often said that in his mind, Cheney is really Traintown, USA. Cheney's ties with the railroad go back to our very founding. The town was platted by the railroad, and the railroad continues to be a part of daily life here. Dr. Pete believed the depot should belong to the community, and he saw it as a tangible piece of our shared heritage in Cheney. So do we. So that's just an outline of what we're hoping for in the future. So I've talked way too much, and we have a talented architect on our board who is a specialist in doing historic restorations, and he's been doing a lot of architect stuff to think to the future. So I'm going to turn it over to Terry Morning and let him talk a little bit about our latest plans, a sneak peek.
Hello, this interesting little picture here. As I was dreaming one day driving around, the picture on the left, way before the building was moved, I just thought it would be fun. I envisioned the depot sitting there with the, with the mill in the background. I go, gosh, that's going to be such a fun view. So I just did a quick sketch and just kind of had fun with it and just goofing around. And after we moved the depot and it's sitting still up on its beams and its blocks, I drove by again and I snapped a picture, and then I compared them, and well, it was more luck than talent probably, but hey, it was fun no matter what. And I'm excited that this is just a really fun view as you drive in from the west side, and it's just a dramatic view. So we'll go to the next slide. And it looks like it cut off a little bit of it. This is a projected site plan or what it will be. You know, we moved the depot from the far upper left. It came down where you see a little bit of a train there, and it did 180-degree rotation. If you watched it for very long, that was the fun part, and that was exciting. And the reason for that is, number one, it's a better looking side of the building. It's the front face of the depot that faced the first, the community would see when they got off the train. That was on the other side of the tracks, or from where it was before. Well, we spun it around for that reason, because it just presents better to the community, and that helps in its success. It's a good looking building. Another reason is that the arched covered outdoor area is now there on the left. You see the depot building's kind of the terracotta shape there. That's no longer going to, if we make this into a restaurant, if you imagine yourself sitting outside in the evening, if it was on the right hand side, which is the west side, you'd bake your brains. It'd be very, very hot. So we spun it around again for that reason too, that now you can be in the shade, as well as the building just reaches towards the community and the old downtown area better. When people are sitting outside enjoying that into the building, it'll help draw people to the building. It's attractive. There's all kinds of different reasons. One of the challenges to spinning it around, the State Historical Society wasn't super thrilled about that. They like the orientation of the building to face the same direction towards the tracks. Well, we felt pretty adamantly about those other three things I just spoke of. So what we're doing is we're going to add, you can kind of see it, there's a track, a false track going down through the parking lot at an angle, and goes from right to left, and there'll be an end of track feature. So it looks like it's a vacated track. And the reason the historic preservation folks like it so much is where that dormer is on the front of the building. I'm not Mr. Railroad guy, I am a depot guy. So the gentleman that, like the yard master or whatever his name was, the signalman that sat in there in that bay window and controlled the whole yard, they like that to orient towards the tracks. So by putting a track in there, we're given a good story that, there was some tracks here, but they're just not there now. So you see a number of things. The burgundy around it is supposed to denote pavers or stamped concrete to look like pavers. We saved all the pavers from around the building that were there originally. We're going to reuse every one of them that we can, and we'll add some more. And that big red stripe that goes from right to left, that is actually a historic portion, or replacing a historic element that was in the original plans and was there a long, long time ago when the building was in its former location. And you see little yellow dots, there's 4 of them there. That's to represent the lampposts that were along that platform. So we're really trying to rebuild and play up the essence of what the building was originally in everything we do. We want to create a mood, a feeling, and evoke your emotions that you're stepping back in time. And but on the railroad side, there's, people love to watch the trains, and it's a noisy track. Let's play it up, and we'll have some benches. We'll have some kiosks out there with some history happening. We intend for this area to be used as long as people behave themselves. We want it to be used all the time in the evenings, and just enjoy the site. That's all, as long as they behave themselves. And we're even dreaming that maybe there on the far right upper corner, that round element, that maybe there's a replica old water tower element that we can bring people up in and have them have a little bit higher viewpoint. So the paver element in the center that heads towards First Street, that's just to kind of draw your eye in and help the business thrive that's there. We do want the building to be a very vital and sustainable business, so that not only helps the business that's there, but also helps the community, and it helps the building stay around for a very long time. If we keep it successful, it'll be around. So let's go inside. Next slide, please. But we're going to look at the historic one first. Oh, that's my drawing. That's an as-built drawing of what the building was when we found it. And so you're going to have, it's flipped over. I'm going to get my bearings here. So the covered archway is on the left, or the outdoor area. Whoever's operating the little arrow, thank you very much. I suspect it's Sue. So in the very center where you come in the door, one way or the other, that's the general waiting room. Kind of just left of center is the general waiting room. And then there's one bathroom off that, which would be the men's bathroom. Now that little room off to the left of that room is the women's waiting room, different time period. And then they had their own little restroom. And so to the right from the general waiting room, that would be the ticket office. Well, that's storage right up there, but the ticket office is right in that main center area. And right down at the bottom, that's that bay window where that gentleman would watch the track and operate all the switches. There's a couple little walls in there. Those are walls that were put in later for offices. That's one big room. Up at the top, there was a mechanical, well, it was a big basement pit, a mechanical room, and kind of a little storage room that was elevated above that. That's all going to be all at one level now when we do that. So to the right of the ticket office, there's a registered room. Again, I'm not Mr. Railroad, I'm Mr. Architecture. So I'm not sure what he did. He operated with the folks out on the track with their baggage, I suspect. All the ticket windows back in and all the original windows like they used to be. So the next big room to the right would be the baggage room. Again, it's been split up with a L-shaped wall that made for offices for the railroad folks there for several years. And then you go a little bit further to the end of the building, that's the freight room. Now that was an elevated room, so you'd go up some steps and there was a loading dock up to it. And so, but that's being all brought down to a usable level. So it's all going to be all at the same level. So let's dream a little bit. What would this look like if it were a restaurant? Maybe something like this. So what we've done, okay, in the very center again, or to the left of center is the general waiting room. That will be a, maybe it's a dining room. In the women's waiting room over to the very left, we've opened that up with a large archway, or we will be opening it up with a large archway. We configured the bathrooms very, very subtly. We want to keep everything as original as possible, but this seems like a logical compromise to have the business flow well and have, doors not going to bathrooms right next to your table when you're eating. That's not usually a good thing. I've been called a lot of things, but I'm even wanting to save the toilets, save the old urinal and everything. That's the kind of purist I am, and it'll look awesome. Just ride through it with Mika folks and we'll make it wonderful. So back to the right from the general waiting room, we go into the ticket room, and it's going to be more dining. And the old ticket window that's between those two spaces, we're going to open that up again. And it had about a 2-foot wide counter on it. And I thought it would be fun to have a double-sided gas fireplace underneath there. Again, we're keeping it original, but we're adding it so it can help this business be successful. And then down where the gentleman would sit and operate the entire yard, maybe there's a countertop height that people just sit there and enjoy a coffee or their meal right there on a bar stool. Now, to the top of that room, where the old mechanical room used to be, the pit, it was always full of water, that could possibly be a serving room for the restaurant or the coffee shop. That is, and we're going to open that up with an archway and whatnot. That's a very exciting space. It was a mechanical room, but it's the only room in the whole building that has a vaulted ceiling. So you look up high, and be sure to do that if you ever get in there. And there's wonderful old pressure tanks and everything else that we hope to keep, and just play it up, have fun with it. That little registers room down to the right of the ticket room, that I see that staying and being kind of an interpretive area where we can just have a little piece of history happening in there. And then we've created a mechanical room and another bathroom. But now we needed Dr. Hansen, really, his vision, as well as helping the building be successful, is to have the people interact with the building on a regular basis. You know, so for a price of a cup of coffee or an inexpensive meal, you could come in and enjoy the building. We also wanted a little conference room area that could be accessible to anybody for little meetings. It's not a huge space, but there's that kind of a curved wall element that helps to define that. Now you see that there's kind of a white area there on the middle of that. I'm picturing that as being an interior window set, you know, not unlike big French doors. Now, if you go all the way down to the far left and you walk in from that arched opening or that arched patio, you'll be able to look all the way down this building. And what do you see at the end of this visual terminus? Those awesome windows. So your eye wants to see something at the end of things. The conference room looking out, you're going to look out onto the patio. If you're standing at the patio looking in, you're going to see at the far end. We're thinking maybe that's a big kitchen where the food would be prepped and then taken to the serving area and just help to thrive. And you see how the pavers are kind of shown around the building. We're just having fun with it and staying true to the historic form. And that is my dog and pony show for today. And that's a conceptual sketch of what it will look like, just in its new home.
Okay, Terry, is that that's a great vision of of where we're going with this. Is a good explanation. Obviously, it's a step-by-step process as we figure out who might use it and how to make sure it's dynamic and it draws people in on a regular basis. So thanks for doing all that work and
You're
putting
welcome.
it together.
I do want to share, Tom, I forgot to say, before we moved the building, even before we touched anything, went in and we did an extensive existing condition survey of everything and documented every piece of trim, its size, its how it was made, the wood material, everything in the building, the colors, and it's all documented so that we can put it back as close as we can. And so that's a document that's in photographs, and we're going to keep it forever. So it's exciting. It's great to be part of a dedicated group that gets the passion of it. So thank you. I'm honored to be part of it.
Yeah, Terry's done a great job of leading the effort to document, even to the point of he spent a while, a few months ago, with knife-like tools, taking the old paint off the building and layer by layer, figuring out exactly what color the original was. And so, I mean, that's dedication, and that's the kind of thing that'll happen. Well, that's the program. We do have to do some, you have to do some business during annual meeting, and what we haven't been able to do the last few years, and this is the very first annual meeting, we haven't really had a chance to do the thing where we elect directors and keep that up. And we kind of have to this year, I think, we kind of have to have another interim year until we get past COVID and get a regular approach. And so we've asked all 12 directors what they would be willing to do, and all have agreed to serve another 2-year term. And so yet I think it's important for the members of the Cheney Depot Society to vote on things like that. And so at this point, I will accept a motion to recommend this slate of directors and ask the Cheney Depot Society members to vote by email to confirm that. Is there a motion from a board member? Is
So
there a
moved.
motion? Okay, there's a motion from Susan.
I'll,
Second,
I'll second that, Tom. Todd.
okay, and the second. So any further discussion? All those in favor then say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Those opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So what I'm proposing that we do, we send out an email ballot to Cheney Depot Society members in a couple of days. And then we'll ask that they send that back by replying to the email no later than 4 p.m. on Friday, April 9th. And hopefully then everyone will, confirm this. And so we'll have an acting board of directors as we finish this project. Next year, we need to have meetings where we talk about the future direction. And I think that probably in the future, there may be other skill sets that will replace some of us on the board whose skill sets are not exactly the most important. So there will be turnover in the board, but I think to me, it's important here. There's a list up there that shows the members this year who would be retiring, but we're looking for board reappointments here for 2021 and make the board useful for our big construction season here. So, okay, those emails will go out and we'll see how that turns out. The next question some people may ask is, how can you help? And many of you in the meeting today know how you can help and have. But if you want to help, contact any board member or send an email to cheneydepot@gmail.com. It's just cheneydepot@gmail.com. And if you'd like, explain your skills or what you would most like to do, how you might be able to help. And we need everything from painting, landscaping, outreach, fundraising, professional services. We can figure out how, and it'd be very important to plug volunteers in. The volunteer opportunities haven't been real abundant this last year because of COVID. We couldn't put people on the site and maintain the COVID protocols. But as COVID improves, there's going to be a lot more opportunities for volunteer activities. And so we look forward to working with you. And if you do social media, which some do and some don't, but if you do Facebook or things like Instagram, that kind of thing, we appreciate your likes and your shares, because that puts a depot out there, and the more notoriety we get, the more chance we have to collect some donations for our purpose on those social media sites. And really important is to spread the word, to have you talk to your friends and neighbors and relatives, acquaintances about the depot project, get them excited about it, and recruit some new members. We'd like to grow that membership list. That's a dynamic element that will keep this thing going. So anyway, with that, that's the end of the content that we have for the meeting. And so I guess it's a point here to ask is, does anyone have questions? Are there any questions that you'd like to ask?
Did I do it? Tom?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? This is Fred Lauritsen. Can you hear me, Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say, also watching is my wife, Catherine, and our guest, Bunny Mutchler. And enjoyed a delicious supper from courtesy of Mason Jar. I did want to ask, what are those crates outside? I see there are a bunch of crates there. What's in those?
The in the fenced off area.
Yeah.
Well, a
I
lot
think
of the crates that are out, or the objects that are in the fenced area, are a lot of the radiators that were taken out, the steam radiators. We're going to put back some of those. Some of them will be surplus, but we're going to figure out and tastefully place them around. We won't be using them as heat source, but they're going to be there for the character things. The old furnace boiler is still there, and we've got some things up our sleeve maybe for that. And I think there's a ton of pavers in there that we're going to be putting down. There's a volunteer opportunity, slugging those around a little bit. Yeah, there's just miscellaneous little things. But we saved a ton of money by consolidating things and getting rid of our fencing that we were renting and making much less fencing. But Fred, I hope I answered your question okay.
Does that answer your question, Fred?
I unmuted there for a minute. And yes. Hey, this is a great program. We've all really enjoyed it and really got a lot out of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm glad that you liked it. Thank you.
We did.
Any other questions? Yeah, Bonnie?
I have one. Yeah, it was a really great program. It's great to see what's going on and what progress has been made. I was wondering, there used to be a guy named Mr. Tubbs that used to resurface old bathtubs. In fact, we have a new home that was designed to look older, and we had a clawfoot tub and an old basin that was redone, but I don't think he's around anymore. I'm wondering, does anybody know if we have anybody in Spokane who does that kind of restoration anymore?
There has been some folks that I've used in the past on projects. I have to double check when we're ready to see if they're still available. They were called Permaceram, I think, or something like that. There is that talent. Spokane has a ton of talent because we have so many wonderful historic buildings. And I have no doubt that there's a resource. First thing on these, the urinal, the sinks, and the toilets, thankfully there's not very many of them, but they're just really, really dirty right now. Hey, anybody volunteer for that? No, they just need well cleaned, and then we'll assess. They might be just fine. Little things where, well, they have patina on them, maybe a little bit. Maybe they're not perfect, but like the interior trims on the windows, they have this wonderful crackle kind of finish on them that they're obviously not new. The buildings had some life and some love, and we kind of really like that. Hope you do too.
How's that going to work with insulation kind of properties and the historical aspect of it?
Well, we'll be putting insulation in the ceiling, of course, and sealing the windows as good as we can. When it comes to the windows, the purest, the old glass is wonderful.
Right.
We hate to just throw those windows away and put in new ones. They might add a little bit of U value, but it really isn't very much. We're going to insulate the floor slab around the edge and do the best we can. So it'll be much, much better. Will it be like a brand new building? No, but it'll be way better. And the nice thing about that stucco wall, there's a ton of R value just in the stucco and the plaster. So the walls, you're not going to lose as much as you think. And we're going to restore the windows to where they're not as leaky as maybe they were, 6 months ago.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll do our best.
Bonnie, just so you know, I did see your question in the chat box and I was going to read it out loud. So thank you for asking again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Comments or suggestions or? Well, as you think of questions, I'm sure that they'll arise as we move forward. And it's coming out of hibernation, and so we're going to be doing some things. don't hesitate to get in touch. Email us, talk to any one of the board members, and we're perfectly willing to share what we know at the time. And it's fun working together for this as a community project. And we do so much appreciate that you have given your support and your partnership in the past, and you did it today by being here. And together we're doing what many thought to be impossible. I mean, I think that a lot of people, if you roll back 2 years, 3 years, would say, you guys are crazy. This is never going to happen. There were all kinds of things like that. Well, it's happening. And it's because of the community's support, the community sticking with it. As I said, when we make grant applications and we can show that there's $148,000 of individual contributions from people in the community, and these are not big contributions. I mean, these are what is in the realm for almost all of us, just serious contributions. But the people who make grant decisions like that, because it shows there's a tremendous community support, and there is here. And for a community the size of Cheney, and for a project this big, it's just amazing. And so let's continue doing the impossible together. We thank you and appreciate you. So with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.